She looked at what you were and made a calculation. Not cruelly, not with malice, just with the quiet, comfortable confidence of someone who had decided, based on the available evidence, that what you offered was common, that the specific investment you brought, the specific way you showed up, the specific quality of who you actually were, all of it was the kind of thing she could find again without much difficulty. She filed you under Replaceable. And then she acted on that assessment. And then something happened that she did not calculate for. Like and subscribe to Stoic Blessing. We show up every week for the man doing the hard work. Let's get into it. The first thing to understand is how the Replaceable assessment gets formed. Because understanding the mechanism is what prevents you from absorbing it as a permanent truth about your worth, rather than a temporary error in her perception. The Replaceable assessment is almost never formed through genuine evaluation of what a person actually brings. It is formed through the specific distortion that familiarity produces, the way that what is consistently present becomes invisible through its very consistency, the way that reliability registers as background rather than as value, the way that a man who shows up the same way every day eventually stops being seen as someone who chooses to show up and starts being experienced as someone who simply is there. The choice behind the showing up disappears. The effort behind the consistency disappears. What remains is the presence, stripped of its context, stripped of its cost, stripped of everything that would make its absence register as a genuine loss. And presence, stripped of all of that, looks replaceable. Not because it is, because the stripping process produces that illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the specific failure of perception that familiarity creates, the tendency of the human mind to stop seeing what it has learned to expect. She did not make fresh eyes. She made the very human error of seeing you through the lens of what your consistency had made you appear to be, predictable, available, and therefore common. And that error, genuinely human, genuinely understandable, is what she is in the process of paying the specific and unavoidable price of making. Comment below, not replaceable, if your consistency was the very thing that made your value invisible. Here is what happened next, the specific, psychological, unavoidable sequence that the Replaceable assessment set in motion the moment she acted on it. She looked for what you were somewhere else, and somewhere else did not have it. Not because the someone else was deficient in every way, because the someone else was not you. Because what you brought, the specific, accumulated, genuinely unrepeatable combination of your character and your investment and your way of being present, is not a category of thing that can be found in a replacement. It is a specific thing, a singular thing, the thing that only exists in the specific person who built it through the specific combination of their specific experience, their specific values, their specific daily choices over the course of their specific life. You are not a type, you are a person, and persons are not replaceable. Types are. She thought she was replacing a type. She discovered she had lost a person. Epictetus taught about the difference between what is general and what is particular, between the category and the specific instance of it. What she thought she was replacing was the category. What she actually lost was the particular, and the particular, your particular, is not available in the next person she tried. It was never going to be available there. The search for it in someone else is the specific process through which the Replaceable assessment corrects itself. Not through argument, through experience. Comment below, not a type, if what she lost wasn't a role. It was specifically you. Now the Stoic demand, the most important one this video makes. You cannot let the process of her discovering her error become the thing your recovery is organized around. You cannot make her eventual recognition of your irreplaceability the destination your growth is pointing toward. Because if her discovery is what your work is for, if the image of her finally understanding what she assumed away is the engine driving your self-investment, then you are still organized around her, still dependent on her assessment, even if the assessment you are waiting for is a favorable one, still making her the authority on your worth, just hoping she uses that authority differently this time. The Stoic work requires the complete relocation of that authority from her to you, so that her eventual recognition, when it arrives, is received not as the confirmation of something you needed her to confirm, but as the confirmation of something you already knew. Marcus Aurelius held this standard with extraordinary consistency. He did not need Rome to tell him he was governing well. He built his sense of himself through the daily, private, internal practice of asking whether his choices reflected the man he had decided to be. And that question, answered honestly and acted on consistently, was sufficient. It did not require external confirmation to remain meaningful. The man who brings that same self-directed standard to his own recovery keeps building after the hope of her recognition has faded, and the man who keeps building past that point arrives somewhere genuinely new, somewhere that her recognition, when it comes, is a pleasant confirmation rather than a desperately needed rescue. Comment below, already knew, if you've stopped waiting for someone else to confirm what you already know. Let's talk about what genuine irreplaceability actually is, because this is the concept at the center of this entire video, and it is almost universally misunderstood. Genuine irreplaceability is not about being the most impressive version of yourself in every measurable dimension. That kind of irreplaceability is fragile because it is always relative. There will always be someone more impressive in some specific dimension, and worth built on the comparison is always one better comparison away from collapsing. Genuine irreplaceability is not comparative. It is existential. It is the specific, simple, profound fact that you are the only person who is you, who has your specific history, your specific values, your specific way of seeing and engaging with the world, and that the combination of those things, expressed consistently through genuine character and genuine investment, produces something that cannot be found in anyone else, regardless of how hard anyone looks. Seneca wrote about the man of genuine character being unlike anyone else, not because he has made himself artificially distinctive, but because he has been honest enough and disciplined enough to become fully, specifically, authentically himself. That specificity, the deep, genuine, fully inhabited specificity of a man who knows who he is and lives accordingly, is what produces genuine irreplaceability, not the performance of uniqueness, the reality of it. And the reality of it is available to every man who does the genuine, daily, unsexy work of becoming more himself rather than more impressive, more honest rather than more optimized, more genuinely present rather than more carefully managed. Comment below, 1 of 1, if you understand that what made you irreplaceable was never something anyone else could duplicate. Here is the honest accounting of what the replaceable assumption cost you while you were inside the dynamic, because doing this honestly is part of what prevents you from paying the same cost in the next connection. Every period of time spent in a dynamic where you were being treated as replaceable was a period in which your best investment was going somewhere that was not valuing it at its actual worth. Not just the emotional cost of being underestimated, the specific, concrete, measurable cost of the energy, the time, the creative and mental bandwidth that was being consumed by the management of a connection that was not genuinely meeting you. That energy had a cost, and the cost was everything else it could have been building if it had been deployed somewhere that understood what it was worth. Seneca wrote that the man who allows his attention and his effort to be consumed by things that do not deserve them is not just wasting energy. He is wasting the irreplaceable substance of his own life. Every hour spent managing the anxiety of being treated as optional was an hour not spent on your work, your growth, the development of the specific skills and character and inner life that would have made you genuinely more yourself. The dynamic did not just undervalue you, it redirected you. It took the current of your life and bent it around a connection that was not worth the bending. The man who fully understands that cost has the most genuine motivation to never accept that treatment again, not from bitterness, from the honest recognition that his life is worth more than that. Comment below, "My time deserved more," if you finally accounted for what the wrong dynamic actually cost you. There is a version of this story where she comes back, and this needs to be addressed with full honesty. The man who has done the genuine Stoic work in this period, who has genuinely invested in himself, genuinely rebuilt his sense of worth on an internal foundation, genuinely arrived at the specific place where her assessment of him is no longer the primary variable in his sense of himself. That man does not respond to her return the way the man who was waiting responds. He does not feel the flood of relief that immediately restores the previous dynamic. He does not allow her return to stop the work as though the work were always a means to this end rather than an end in itself. He engages honestly from the grounded place the work built, and he asks the only question that matters. The question is not, is she back? It is, what is she actually offering? And does it reflect a genuine change in how she sees what she previously dismissed? The return that comes from genuine recognition is a different offering from the return that comes from the discomfort of having been wrong and wanting to restore what was lost. The first is worth engaging with fully and openly. The second is the previous assumption attempting to reassert itself under the emotional cover of a softer approach. The man who has done the work knows the difference, not because he is suspicious, because he is clear. Comment below, new terms or nothing, if you've decided that coming back only works if it's built on something genuinely different. Let's talk about what you build in this period. Not to prove the replaceable assessment wrong, not to demonstrate your worth to someone who underestimated it, but because the man you become through this specific experience is the man who goes into every future relationship with something that cannot be manufactured any other way. The specific, embodied, earned through living knowledge of his own irreplaceability, not as an affirmation he tells himself, but as a truth he has lived into through the specific and demanding experience of being treated as though he were common and choosing daily not to become common because of that treatment. That knowledge changes everything. He brings himself fully because he knows what himself is worth. He holds his standards genuinely because he has verified through experience that his standards are real. He walks away from things that are not meeting him without the anguish that used to make walking away feel like loss. Epictetus taught that the man who has done the genuine philosophical work of knowing himself is the man who is hardest to deceive and hardest to diminish. Because you cannot tell a man who genuinely knows his own worth that he is worth less. You can tell him, he will hear you, and he will remain exactly as he was, because what he knows did not come from you and cannot be revised by you. The replaceable assumption failed, not just because she eventually discovered it was wrong. It failed because the man it was made about had too solid a relationship with his own actual worth to be permanently diminished by it. Comment below, undiminishable, if this period gave you a relationship with your own worth that no assumption can touch. Here is the final reframe, the one that pulls everything together. She assumed you were replaceable. She was wrong. But the deeper truth is this: the fact that she was wrong is not the most important thing about this story. The most important thing is what you did while she was in the process of discovering she was wrong. Whether you collapsed into the assumption and let it define you, whether you organized your recovery around proving it false, or whether you did the third thing, the Stoic thing, which is to receive the assumption for the temporary and mistaken judgment it was, refuse to let it alter your relationship with your own worth, and invest the energy the dynamic had been consuming back into the daily, genuine, unsexy work of becoming the fullest and most honest version of yourself. The man who did the third thing does not need her to confirm the assumption was wrong. He already knows. He knew before she figured it out, in the specific and unassailable way that comes not from someone telling you your worth, but from living it daily into verified truth. He woke up every morning in the period of her assumption and chose himself, chose his work, his growth, his standards, his life, not to produce her eventual recognition, but because that is who he had decided to be. And the accumulation of those choices, made daily and imperfectly, and in the specific and unglamorous reality of just showing up for himself one more day, is what produced the man standing at the end of this experience. Not the man who was proven right, the man who never needed to be. Like and subscribe to Stoic Blessing. Stay grounded, stay whole, stay unbreakable.